Welcome back. In today's class, we will look at strings in more detail. Previously, we saw how to declare and define a new string, how to join or concatenate two strings, how to use the multiplication operator with strings, and how to iterate through strings. Today, we will revisit some of these concepts, but we will see them in more detail. And we will also look at how to do string indexing, string slicing, and use some basic string methods to do manipulation of strings. First, let's see whether there is any difference between initializing a string using a single quote or a double quote string literal. So in line 8, I'm declaring a new string variable string1. It's initialized with hello space world, which is created using single quotes. In line 9, I'm creating string2, initializing again with hello space world, this time created using double quotes. Now to compare these two strings, we can use the equal to operator. So the equal to operator will return true when the strings are the same, and it will return false when the strings are different. So here I'm checking whether string1 is equal to string2. If string1 is equal to string2, we will print they are the same. Otherwise, we will print they are different. So first, let's run the program till line 21 and check whether string1 is equal to string2. Notice we see they are the same, which means these two strings are equal. What this means is, in Python, we can use either single quote string literals or double quote string literals to initialize new strings. Python language supports both of them, so it's the choice of the programmer to choose one of these two methods and to use it consistently throughout the program. Now, the equal to operator is case sensitive. That is, suppose if I try to compare apple with apple and one of the apple has an uppercase A, notice the comparison fails. For the equal to operator to return true, both the apples should be of the same case. Now there are some special scenarios in which we need to be a little more careful. So suppose our string literal has a special character, then we need to pay attention. We need to either use an escape character, which we saw in C++, which is the backslash, or when our special character is a single quote, we can use double quotes to create the string literal. So here my string is yes I am, which has a single quote. Since it has a single quote, I'm using double quotes to create the string literal. And in line 23, I'm using escape character to escape the single quote, and I'm using single quotes to create the string literal. Now again, let's verify whether these two strings are the same or not. So if they're the same, we should see they're the same, otherwise they're different. Okay, so again, we see that these two strings are the same. So there is no difference between using double quotes to create string literals which have a single quote as part of a string, or we can use escape character to escape the single quote. Now similarly, when our special character is a double quote, we can use single quotes to create the string literal, or if we want to be consistent and use double quotes to create our string literals, we can use escape character to escape the quotes on both sides. So these two should print sweet is an ice cream with sweet in double quotes. Okay, so notice when we execute the first print statement, we see sweet is an ice cream with sweet in double quotes. Now similarly, when I execute the next line, we should see sweet is an ice cream again with sweet in double quotes. Now, when we go to functions, we will see that functions will, when we define a new function, we will create what's known as a docstring. To create this docstring, we need to know how to create multi-line strings. To create multi-line strings in Python, we will begin a string with using 3 single quotes or 3 double quotes. So any string that begins with 3 single quotes or 3 double quotes creates a multi-line string. These strings can span multiple lines. However, it is still a single string literal. So when we execute this print statement, we should see this is a multi-line string, and we will see the same format in which we define the string to be displayed on the terminal. So even though it's a single string, we see that it is spanning multiple lines. Similarly, there is no difference between using a single or a double quote, so this second thing also should print the same thing. Okay. Now, when we are working with paths, we will have to be a little more careful with using single or double quotes to create the string literal. So here I'm declaring a variable called file path and initializing it with c:\sum \name. Now, let's first print file path as is and then check whether it prints it as a c:\sum \name or b c: in the next line \sum \name or c:\sum and in the next line ame or d something else. So first let's look at the output and then let's try to reason why we see the particular response. Now notice we see the third option, which is c:\sum and in the next line ame. The reason why c is the correct answer is because the first backslash is properly displayed. However, when we come to the second backslash, notice the next character is n. Backslash n is also the new line character. So when backslash n is parsed, c:\sum is displayed on the first line. Backslash sum will take us to the next line and ame is displayed on the next line. Now, in order to avoid this, we need to escape the second backslash. We don't need to escape the first backslash because backslash s does not correspond to anything. So since backslash n corresponds to new line, we will escape the second backslash. Now this time the correct answer should be A. It should print c:\sum \name. Okay, so again, when we are working with paths, we need to be extra careful as to when we should use the escape character to escape. To be safe, you can also use backslash. You can escape all the backslashes in the path so that you will not encounter issues like these. Next, let's look how to index strings. So in C++, when we worked with std::string, we saw we could use the square bracket operator and access any character of the string, any element of the character of a string using the square bracket operator. Similarly, in Python, we can access a single character of the string using the square bracket operator by providing it with an index. So first I'm declaring a variable called class name, initializing it with programming_for_engineers. And we will first print the number of characters this particular string has. We can use the inbuilt method len to compute the number of characters that are present in the string. So first let's execute till here and check how many characters are part of this string. Okay, notice programming_for_engineers has 25 characters. So we can use the square bracket operator and go from index 0 to 24 to access the individual characters of this string. So when I print class name of 0, we will see the first character. So let's execute the next line. And now notice first character in programming_for_engineers is P. Similarly, to access the second character, we can simply write class name square brackets 1, and this should print the second character, which is R. Now, in C++, we can only traverse strings in forward direction. That is, the indices are always positive. In Python, we can also traverse the string in the reverse direction. That is, we can provide negative indices, and Python will now display the last character. So class name of -1 is equivalent to writing class name of length of class name -1. Since length of class name gives us the total number of characters, length of class name -1 will give us the last character. The index begins from 0, so it ends at length of class name -1. So let's execute the next line, and now notice the last character in programming_for_engineers is S. So again, to access the penultimate character, we can simply write class name of -2. And this time we should see R. So string indexing works in both positive and negative direction. So we can either use positive indices to go in the forward direction or negative indices to go in the reverse direction. Now there are a couple of different ways to iterate through strings. We can create a new integer sequence for indices and then use the square bracket operator to access a particular character of the string using the index variable. Or we can simply use the syntax which we saw in the last class, which is for char in class name, wherein char points to one of the characters of the string, and in each new iteration it will point to the next character. So first let's look at the syntax for creating an integer sequence and using the square bracket operator to access a particular element. So here I'm using range function which we saw in the last class. It takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the start of the integer sequence, which is optional. The default value is 0. The second parameter is the end of the sequence. Here I want to create a sequence which begins at 0, goes up to length of class name -1, and then each new integer in the sequence should be one more than the previous integer. So the step size is equal to 1, which is again the default value. Now within the body of this for loop, I'm checking whether the current character is equal to I, or whether it's equal to u. If it's equal to I or u, we will see there is an I or u. Otherwise, we will do nothing. We will simply go to the next character. So first let's execute the first for loop. Okay, there must be something wrong here, so let's restart the program. Okay, notice we see the print statement twice. So we see the print statement twice because there are 2 i's in our programming_for_engineers. We will also see 2 times if there is 1 I, 1 u, or if there are 2 u's. However, in our case, we have 2 i's, and therefore we see the print statement twice. Now, similarly, we can simplify this for loop. If all we are interested is individual characters and we want to loop through every character in our string, we can simplify and use this syntax, which is the more Pythonic way of writing the for loop, wherein char will point to a particular character. It begins at the first position, and at each new iteration, it will go to the next position in order. Again, I'm simply checking whether char is equal to I, or whether it's equal to u. If it's equal to I or u, we will see there is an I or u. So we should again see 2 i's and 2 u. Since we have 2 i's, we should see this print statement twice. Okay. Next, let's see how to do string slicing. So string indexing lets us to access one single character in our string. String slicing can be used to access a group of characters. So the syntax works as follows. Suppose str is the name of our string variable. We can use the square brackets operator, and within square brackets operator, we can create a new sequence. To create a new sequence, the syntax is as follows. Start::end will create a new sequence beginning at start, and the sequence goes up to end -1. So all the characters that go from start to end -1 will be returned when we write this particular code. So let's first check what will be the answer for this particular statement here. So here I want to print class name of 0:11. First, let's check how many characters are there in option A. Notice option A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now 0 to 11 will create a new sequence which goes from 0 to 10. 0 to 10 has 11 characters. So this seems like the most likely answer because the second choice has 12 characters. So this should not be the right answer. Now first, let's see what will be the character at index 11. At index 11, we should see the character to be _. Okay. So since index 11 is underscore and we are slicing this to go from 0 to 10, the correct answer should be programming. So if I execute the next line, class name of 0:11 should give us programming. So if we want to query a substring of our string, we can use string slicing to access the substring. Now there are several different variants where we can, with which we can call this slicing method. Here I'm only providing a start index. The end index is not provided. So it goes from start to end of the string. Similarly, here start is missing, only end is provided, which means it begins from 0 and goes to end minus 1. And when we simply write colon without start or end, it again goes from 0 to length of string minus 1. That is, it traverses the whole string. Okay, so again, I'm just simply showing you what happens when we try to slice from 0, which is the beginning, until length of class name. So this should print the whole string, which is programming underscore for underscore engineers. Okay, next let's check what happens when we slice using a negative index. So these indices can be both positive and negative. So here my start is 0 and my end is minus 1, which means my sequence begins at 0 and goes to length of class name minus 2. So the correct answer should be programming of engineers. The last character will not be part of this slice. So let's verify the answer. Okay, so notice now the correct answer is B, programming for engineer. Okay, so next we will see how to use some inbuilt methods to manipulate strings. The first inbuilt method that we are seeing is the replace method. So we can use replace method to replace some characters within our string. Here I want to replace all underscores using dash. So the first argument that I pass to the replace method is the character that I want to replace. The second parameter is the character that I want to replace by. So here I want to replace programming, so replace the two underscores using 2 dash. So the correct answer should be A. So let's verify again. Notice the correct answer was programming dash for dash engineers. So to replace a specific character, we can simply use the replace method. Now there are some inbuilt helper functions to edit strings. So suppose we are writing some documentation and we want to convert a string literal into a title. To do that, we can use the inbuilt method called title. So here I'm declaring a new string, welcome to CS6005, and I want to convert this into a title. So I'm simply calling the title method that is part of this string class. Now notice here, first let's maybe stop this and then check what is the type of message. String in Python is string is a class in Python. So message should be an object of type string. So again, message is of type class, message is of type string, so it's an instance or an object of type string, which is a class. So remember again, in C++ when we saw classes, we saw that we can call the member functions of a class using the dot operator. So simply we create objects, then we use the dot operator to call an inbuilt member function of the class. So here title is a member function of this class string. So when I call title, what it does is it will convert each word in our string literal, the beginning the first character of each word to uppercase. So now welcome W is lowercase, so it should be flip to uppercase. Similarly, T will be uppercase in 2. Now CS has uppercase C, but it also has uppercase S. So it should convert capital S to small s. And 6005 will be left as is. So let's run this one line. And now notice, welcome to CS6005 is displayed with W capital, T capital, and S in lowercase. Now suppose we want all the characters to be lowercase, we can simply use the method lower. So this should display all our characters in our string literally using lowercase. Similarly, if we use the inbuilt method upper, all the characters in our string should be displayed using uppercase or all capitals. Now we can also use the replace method to replace a group of strings. Previously we saw how to replace a single character. Now suppose we want to replace this welcome message to welcome the mechanical engineering students, we can simply write welcome replace CS6005 with ME6250. This should now display welcome to ME6250. Okay. Next, let's look at some string manipulation methods that will help us to work with white spaces in our string literals. So there are scenarios where we will want to remove these white spaces. When we accept inputs from the user, when we accept a sequence of numbers as inputs from the user, we will see the use of these inbuilt methods. For now, let's just understand what they are doing. So suppose I have a new string white space underscore string and it's initialized with a white space in the beginning, hey, and then a white space at the end. Now if I want to remove the white space on the left hand side or the beginning, I can use the inbuilt method lstrip. This will strip the white space at the beginning. Similarly, I can use rstrip to remove the white space at the end. So this will remove the white space at the end and leaves the white space as is at the beginning. Or I can simply use strip to remove the white space at both beginning and at the end. So let's execute them line by line. We will not see the white space on the terminal. So here, even though we don't see any white space after hey, there is a white space on the right hand side. The next one should be clear. We should see the white space at the beginning and then hey, so that should be clear. And the last one should remove white space on both left and right. We will come back to these strip methods, so it's useful to remember lstrip, rstrip, and strip. Next, let's see how to use the inbuilt method starts with and ends with. When we're working with files, we will use ends with usually to check the extension of the file name. Here I'm declaring a variable called URL and initializing it with www.cs.utah.edu. Now I want to check whether this particular URL begins with HTTPS. To check whether it begins with HTTPS, I can use the inbuilt method starts with. If it begins with HTTPS, this method will return a true, otherwise it returns a false. Similarly, I can use the method ends with to check whether this particular string ends with .edu. So let's run this particular line. Notice, since it begins with HTTPS, it returns a true. Similarly, since it ends with .edu, it should again return a true. Now we can stop the program and change this to .com and change this to HTTP. And now let's check what's the answer. Notice again that since HTTPS and both HTTP are part of this beginning of the string, this should still return a true. However, this does not end with .com, so this should return a false. The second one should be a false. The first one is true and the second one is false. Okay. Next, let's check whether we saw this in the previous class. We can use the in keyword to also search whether a particular substring is part of our string or not. Here I don't care whether edu is at the beginning or at the end. All I want to know is whether .edu is part of my string. If it is part of URL, we will see a true, otherwise we should see a false. Notice, since .edu is part of our URL, we see a true. However, if I make this edus, we should get a false. That is, it doesn't look for a substring, even though .edu is part of URL. .edus is not part of URL. So it searches for the whole string that we provide and then looks for .edus. Since .edus is not part of the URL, we get a false. Okay. Next, let's see how to use the find method. So far we saw how to check whether a substring begins at the beginning or whether a substring is at the end of our string, or whether a substring is part of our string or not. Now, if you want to know where the substring occurs, we can use the find method. So here I'm using find to find the position at which .edu is part of our URL. So url.find in parentheses the string literal.edu will give us the position at which .edu begins. So this should print 19, and now when I print URL of 19 colon, what this is doing, as we saw previously, this will slice our string. The slice begins at 19 and goes up to end of string. So this should show .edu on the terminal. Okay, so the next line is simply using, instead of 19, url.find to find the correct position, and then it's slicing till the end of the string. So this should again show .edu. Let's simply restart this. And notice now the next statement should also print .edu. So if you want to, if you're searching for a particular substring in your string, you can use the find method and use string slicing to access that particular substring. Now, in C++, we saw there were some helper functions to check whether a string contains only alphabets or whether a string contains only digits. These were part of the CC type module. Now in Python, we have similar functions. So here I'm creating a new variable called file name and initializing it with basics.py. And now I want to check whether file name has only alphabets. The choices are true or false. So let's look at the answer and then try to reason it. Notice the answer is false. Now the reason why it is false is because our string literal contains a punctuation. So we have a full stop, which is a punctuation, and therefore file name does not contain only alphabets. However, if I use slicing to only check whether basics has only alphabets, then that should return a true. So file name of :-3 should now print basics. And now when we call is alpha on basics, that should return a true, since basics only contain alphabets. Okay. Now similarly, I'm creating a new variable called number, initializing it with 1, 2, 3, and now we can use this inbuilt method is digit to check whether there are only digits in this particular string. Notice this again returns a true. So suppose I can stop this program now and change this to have some punctuation, and now this time this method should return a false. So you can use isAlpha to check whether the string contains only alphabets. You can use isDigit to check whether the string contains only digits. Now finally we will see some string formatting examples. So in Python we can create a string literal with placeholders. So notice here I've created a string literal which is mix with open and closed braces and a couple more open and closed braces to make an ideal omelette. These open and closed braces or pair of braces are placeholders. and we will use the format method to fill these placeholders. So the format method, to the format method, we are passing 3 arguments. There are 3 placeholders on the left hand side, and therefore we are passing 3 arguments. The first argument will be, the first placeholder will be filled using the first argument. The second placeholder will be filled using the second argument. And the third placeholder will be filled using the third argument. So now when I execute this line, we should see mix 2 eggs, 30 grams of milk, and a pinch of salt to make an ideal omelette. So it's useful to create placeholders in our string literals and fill it using variables. You don't need to pass string literals. You can actually pass any variables. Format is a function, so think of these parameters as arguments that are passed to a function. Now suppose I want to fill these placeholders in a different order. So notice here I'm passing 2 arguments to the format function. I have 2 placeholders. I can use indices to mention which argument should be used to fill which placeholder. Here I want to fill the first placeholder using the 0th parameter or the first argument, and the second placeholder using the first parameter or the second argument. So the first argument has index 0, the second argument has index 1. In the second case, I want to fill the first placeholder using the second argument and the second placeholder using the first argument. So we can use indices to change the order in which we want to fill these placeholders. So first let's execute the first line, and notice we see Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra. Now when I execute the next line, we should see Night in the Strangers by Frank Sinatra. So we can fill the placeholders in the order that we want by using indices. If we don't if the braces has no index, if it's empty, then it will simply fill the first placeholder using the first argument, second placeholder using the second argument, and so on and so forth. Now we can also create keywords when we are passing arguments or parameters to this format method, and use these keywords to fill the placeholders. So here I'm creating 3 keywords: film, adjective, and theater. And the first placeholder is filled using film, second placeholder is filled using theater, third placeholder is filled using adjective. Notice the order is different here: film, adjective, theater, and I'm filling it with film, theater, and adjective. Again, this should print The Lord of the Rings at BFI IMAX was incredible. So we can use keywords to fill the placeholders, and I think this is the most useful way of using the format function to fill a placeholder. This makes the code more readable, and we will also be able to fill a particular placeholder programmatically. Now we can also use this format function to format numbers. So here the first example shows us how to format pi. I want to display 3.14159 followed by whatever is the decimal digits, but only up to 5 decimal digits. So first let's correct this. First let's change this to 5. And now let's first print and then go back to the syntax. Notice now we see 3.14159, which is pi, and there are only 5 digits after the decimal point. So we can control how many digits we want to display using the string formatting. So we are passing pi as an argument to format method. Again, braces create a placeholder. Within this placeholder, we will substitute pi. And the format here says that we want to only display 5 digits after the decimal point. Now, if we want to display more digits or less digits, we can simply edit this number. So if I want to display 8 digits after the decimal point, I can make it 8. And now we have 8 digits after the decimal point. Now, in the next example, I'm showing you how to display number 15 in 3 different ways. Here we are only passing one single parameter to the format method, and therefore the index is 0 in all three cases. So what this says is that we will fill all three placeholders using the same parameter 15. However, the format is different. The first placeholder will display the number in decimal. The second placeholder will display the number using hexadecimal number system. The third placeholder will display this number using binary number system. So let's execute this. Notice 15 in first 15 is displayed in decimal, then 15 is displayed in hexadecimal, which is F, and finally 15 in binary is 1111. Now the next example simply shows how to pass three arguments and use the index 0, 1, 2 to fill the three different placeholders. So the first placeholder will show 2 in decimal, so the output should be 2. Second placeholder will show the first parameter in hexadecimal. Since 4 in hexadecimal is 4, we should still see 4. The last one should show the last parameter, which is 8 in binary, which is 1000. So now when I continue, the last line prints 2, 4, and 1000. So we can use that format method to format both strings and numbers. We create new placeholders using braces. So an opening and a closing brace creates a new placeholder. If the placeholder is empty, we will simply replace it with the corresponding parameter that's passed in the right order. If we want to fill the placeholder using a specific order, we can either use keywords or indices to fill the placeholder. So this completes dropping out strings. Next time we will begin with lists. We will also see dictionary, tuples, and sets. These are the data structures that we will be using in the Python programs. Once we complete these basic building blocks, we can then start looking at simple programs that will use some of these basic concepts. Thank you.